Okay. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Sunday Feast program of ISKCON Portland. Um, I welcome all of you, and I've been asked to speak on some uh, devotional topic today. So, the topic that I have chosen for today is the true nature of God. What is the true nature of God? And as you all probably know that Gaur Purnima is going to come up in 2 weeks from now. I think it's exactly 2 weeks from now. It's on a Sunday. Uh, Today is 14th, Pi Day, 3/14. And then two weeks from now is 3/28, 28th March. And Gaur Purnima this year in 2021 is falling on that day. And I was thinking what to speak on or what to share, and I thought that what would be uh, a good sort of a intersection between the Bhagavad Gita and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the topic of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva came to my mind, the simultaneous oneness and difference. This is the most wonderful philosophy that was uh, taught to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to understand the supreme truth, the supreme Lord, um, in a complete way. And I thought I'll speak on that. And it gave me a chance to think through this topic myself, to collect various aspects from various places in the Bhagavad Gita, especially the Bhagavad Gita, and make a short presentation on this topic. So, like I had said earlier, I enjoy doing this activity of taking a theme or a topic and stitching together aspects from Srimad Bhagavad Gita to give a unified or an overall understanding of that topic as I have understood it. And if I make any mistakes, please forgive me or correct me. So, having said that, we will get started. So, once again, the topic for today would be, what is the true nature of God? And yeah, before we get started, let us recite the Mangalacharan prayers to receive the mercy and blessings of the previous acharyas, Srimati Radharani, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dada. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, before we get into the Bhagavad Gita, I just wanted to introduce the topic to you, and I'll share a screen. I'll share my screen. As we said, the topic for today is what is the true nature of God? So if we want to understand the true nature of God, let's take this example of what does it mean to say what is the true nature? What do we mean by that? So let's say take this watch that I am showing on the screen. So what is the true nature of this watch? So let's break it down just to simplify things. We all, I don't know, maybe today's children may not know, but the older people, parents and etc., might know that there used to be something called mechanical watches with a spring and something inside. So, but just by looking at the watch, like I'm showing in the picture, how do you know what kind of a watch it is? So what kind of a watch this may be? Any idea? Just by looking at the picture, is it a digital watch or a mechanical watch?
It's an analog watch. Analog.
Mechanical watch. Okay. Let me show you another picture. So what would you say about these two? Also, both are mechanical?
Looks like. I know, so this is a trick question.
Well, I'm from an electronics and tech background. So anyway, but what would you say about this one? On the right, the left-hand side picture is the same.
Yeah.
It's the same picture in the previous slide. So I just copy pasted that same picture here. If you see, this is the picture I showed in the first slide.
Okay.
Second slide has exact same picture on the left-hand side. I added a new picture on the right-hand side.
Looks the same.
Both mechanical?
There's quartz, but that's it.
Unless the dial is digital and showing that particular image, maybe looks mechanical.
Looks mechanical, but see, you see here, there's a word written quartz, like Jai Sachinandan Prabhuji pointed out. What does that mean? So now I have, just because a word has been printed on top, a label, just a label has been put. But what does that show?
Some different features?
Yes, some different features, but a little bit again, as I said, I am from a technology or high-tech background, computer electronics. Quartz means there's a quartz crystal inside. And that's, long story short, if there's a quartz crystal, it means it's an electronic watch, basically. It's a digital watch, technically. And somehow some extra things have been added to it to make it into like hands. So there is some mechanical aspect to it, but the main core inside is actually digital because it's based on a quartz crystal. So now if I show you this picture, now which one is mechanical and which one is digital?
The right-hand side is the digital one.
Now it's very easy because, so the point is that, yes, so obviously the right-hand side is digital and the left-hand side picture is still the same. So just by looking at something from far away, it may not be possible to understand the reality inside. There is some reality inside. We have to, we all know, if we were to open up the watch and then see what is inside, then we will know what is the reality. But by looking at it from a distance or from outside, it may be tricky, or it may not be possible to find out what is the reality. And there is some reality. There is no doubt, if you open up any of, I showed 3 kinds of watches. One is this one on the left hand side, which I have been showing. Then there is this quartz watch, but it does have hands. And the third one is also a quartz watch. It has a quartz crystal inside, but it does not have hands. It has a digital display. So the reality can be, there is some reality, but the looks can be deceiving. That's the point. So here, just to kind of complete the picture, I have shown the internal workings of the 3 types of watches. On the left side is the mechanical watch, which is purely mechanical. It's based on a spring. There is no, hopefully, again, I took this picture from the internet. So on the left-hand side is it has a spring or a coil which kind of uncoils. That's what keeps the time as to how fast the spring uncoils. And that's why, if you remember, you had to, every day in the morning, you had to, tighten up the spring using the dial that is on the watch. In the middle is a electronic watch, but it has some mechanical aspects just to show the hands, because many people are used to, or were used to, seeing watches with hands. So still there is a quartz crystal, and you can see here there's a little chip here. This number 3 is a chip, electronic chip. There's a battery which powers the chip. For every chip, you need a battery. And then there are some gears to move the hands. But still, the source of time is still this chip. And inside this chip is a quartz crystal. And that's why on that other watch, you saw the word quartz written here, which tells that inside it's a quartz crystal inside a chip. And this one is a fully digital watch. You cannot see any dials or any gears. It's a purely electronic circuit. And there's a chip, there's a battery, and those kind of things. Now, of course, there's a dial here. I don't know what that is for. Maybe it's to change the colors or whatever maybe. And these days I have you get all these electronic watches like Apple Watch, where you can even change the screen how it looks like by simply swiping on it. So all kinds of watches are there, but inside what there is very hard to understand unless you open up and look at it like we are looking at it here. So that's the point I want to make. Now, this is a simple watch, and there is so much technical stuff inside the watch. Now, let us take the greatest reality in the universe. And that greatest reality in the universe is what we call as the absolute truth, the supreme truth, or God. And if we want to understand what is the reality or what is the truth about God, what is his real nature, then how do we open up? What do we open up? Like the watch, what do we open up? So what tells us what is the reality about God? And the answer is that the Shastras, or the Vedic texts, the scriptures, tell us who God is. So we need to open the Shastras like we opened the back of the watch. In our case, in this case, we open the book, the Shastras, and that tells us who God is. So in the Shastras, there is a very clear description that is given, and I want to go to my next screen, which is, where is my next screen? Right here. Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost scripture, and in the first canto, second chapter, 11th verse, all the 3 understandings are given. So now there is not one understanding of God. Of course, God is not as simple as a watch. God is a little bit harder to understand. And God has 3 realities, not one. And those 3 realities are mentioned in this verse. it says Vadanti tat tat. Sorry. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti parmati paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. So the translation given by Srila Prabhupada is, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So those are the three names or the three realities that have been given by the Shastras to this absolute truth. The absolute truth has three realities called Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So that is the first line of understanding, that first of all, there are three realities. Then that is a little hard for us to understand why there are three realities. And it would have been so nice if there was only one reality and somebody told us what that one reality is. So that answer is also there. There is, what does it mean to have three realities? So let's understand that. And for that, we will go back to our slides and we will see what does it mean to have three realities. So we will take the example of a cake. And you can see this is a very nice cake with Hare Krishna written on it. So we can imagine that this Hare Krishna cake is God. And of course, you know, Lord's Prasadam and the Lord are none different. So we can say that this cake is representing, for the purposes of our discussion, is representing God. Okay. And the cake has one reality. But if you think about it from an observer, the cake can be said to have three realities. Suppose a person is standing far away and his face is turned away from the cake. He cannot see the cake. He's in a different room or whatever, something like that. So he cannot directly see the cake, but he is somewhere in the vicinity. But he can smell the cake. So when, you know, I like cake, and when, you know, there's a cake, I get the smell and all my taste buds and my tongue starts salivating, my mind starts, you know, dwelling on the cake. And I feel so happy and so, you know, that I'm, you know, hopefully, you know, if it's a friendly environment and this person will offer me the cake, I will finally get to eat it. So that whole concept, or that my consciousness is dwelling in the cake if I am in the vicinity, even though I cannot see it. I have no, other than smelling it, I have no proof of its reality, whether it's a round cake or a square cake, one layer cake or a three layer cake, strawberry cake or a vanilla cake. I have no idea about it, but still I can smell and I feel very nice, very happy. So that is one understanding. And I know that the cake is there. I absolutely know that the cake is there. So from these attributes, I can sense. So let's say that that is one reality. So I know about the reality of the cake. Then the next level is if I'm able to actually, I come closer and I'm able to see the cake. So now I know, aha, it's a round cake, not a square one. It's a single layer cake, not a three layer cake. It is probably a vanilla cake, not a strawberry cake. And I know much more details about the cake. And then, so that is the second level of understanding the reality of the cake. And that is giving me more details. It's one would say it is the higher understanding, a more deeper understanding of the nature or the reality of the cake. But still, what is the best way to know what the cake is? So I know the first, I know the second, but unless and until I eat the cake, that is the best way to know the nature of the cake. Then I can actually taste it. I can actually feel blissful. Then I can feel fully satisfied about the cake or regarding the cake. So that is the third reality about the cake. When I actually taste it, yes, it's actually a strawberry cake, and it's nicely made. It has not been over baked. It has not been under baked. There is the right amount of ghee and sugar and all the nice things inside it. And it just melts as soon as I put it in my mouth. So that is the third reality when you actually eat it, which means you are actually interacting with the cake. The cake and yourself are interacting with each other from all angles. You are able to put it inside your mouth and taste it. So that is the third level of reality. So now we can understand that in a simple object like a cake, what do I mean by three levels of reality? And those are the three levels of reality that are expressed in this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Brahman understanding is like the understanding the reality about God from far away, from a distance. And you do get a lot of mental, from the mind, a lot of happiness that this is the supreme reality. It is better than anything that I have been experiencing in the material world. If you have been eating, let's say, just salad all your life, and then you smell the cake, that itself is a great feeling, because salad is apparently not very tasty, at least for me. So smelling the cake is such a blissful feeling. So similarly, coming in contact with the smell of Krishna, or the energy of Krishna, and which is known as Brahman, it is supremely satisfying and pleasing to a person, to a living entity in the material world, because it gives so much peace and happiness to the mind. But then when one comes closer to God, then he is able to see the form of the Lord, that four-armed form of Lord Narayana. When he sees, then he is completely mesmerized with that four-armed form of the Lord. And that is like the Paramatma. The Paramatma is having four hands. He is the Narayana, or the Vishnu form. And when one sees that form of the Lord, one is completely mesmerized, and it is much higher level of, and much more satisfying, and gives more happiness to one's mind and to the soul, than the Brahman understanding. Just like Parikshit Maharaj, when he was in the womb, he saw this four-armed form of Lord Narayana, which came to protect him from the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama. And he was completely enchanted by that form of the Lord. And he spent the rest of his life trying to find that form of the Lord. Similarly, Narad Muni and Dhruva Maharaj, after he did so much penance and austerities, the Lord Paramatma from inside came out and showed him his four-armed form. And finally, there is the Bhagavan form, with which the devotees can interact. That's like eating the cake, which means actually experiencing in specific situations the sweetness of the Lord. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is full of such instances. If I start, even listing them down, we will take many hours and days to even enumerate all the interactions between the Lord and his devotees. Just very sweet and very personal level interactions between Lord, in his various forms, like Lord Narsingadev, how he he was so ferocious with Hiranyakashipu that he tore apart his body. But with Prahlad Maharaj, who's a 5-year-old boy, he was like a little cat who was like licking the body of Prahlad Maharaj, like a cat licks the body of its kitten. And like that, he was personally interacting with his devotees. So that is the Bhagavan understanding, or the Bhagavan realization of God. So these are the three levels of understanding of God. And all are correct, like smelling the cake, seeing the cake, and eating the cake. They are all real. You cannot say that smell of the cake is unreal or seeing the cake is unreal, and only when I eat it, that's when it is real. That's when I know that the cake is real. No, even if you smell it, you very well know that it is there. The cake is absolutely there. So these are the levels of the understanding of the supreme reality. So that is the sort of the overall um, um aspect that I wanted to share with you. Now I want to go into the Bhagavad Gita, and very quickly, since we only have 25 to 30 minutes left, I wanted to go into the Bhagavad Gita and show you some aspects, how these three aspects are coming out so clearly from the Bhagavad Gita. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is a very condensed and concise text. The Srimad Bhagavatam is much more elaborate. It has 18,000 verses as counted by the number of syllables, and has much more room to explain and go into a lot of details, like this verse that I'm showing on the screen. Whereas Bhagavad Gita was spoken on a battlefield between Lord Krishna and Arjuna, and you can imagine that a battle was going to happen and there is not a lot of time. So the whole Bhagavad Gita was spoken in a matter of an hour, 1 hour between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukdev Goswami had full 7 days to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. So 7 days versus 1 hour. So Lord Krishna is giving to Arjun all the understanding in a more compact and concise way, but still the full understanding is still given. It is now up to us to open the Bhagavad Gita, like we open the watch. We open the Bhagavad Gita, and with the instructions and explanations given by our spiritual masters like Srila Prabhupada and all the previous acharyas before him, from whom he has squeezed the juice out of all the interpretations and explanations and commentaries given by previous acharyas. He has squeezed the juice out of all of it and given it in his Bhagavad Gita as it is, commentaries and purports, the Bhaktivedanta purports. And from all those, we understand the reality or the true nature of reality. So let us look at some aspects of the Bhagavad Gita and see what the Bhagavad Gita says about this matter. Now, Lord Krishna has very expertly conveyed many different things in a few verses. So that's why we need the commentaries of the acharyas. So many aspects are going to be covered. We will try to extract out the aspects that are relevant for this discussion from those very verses. Those very verses could be also give aspects for other topics. So if we have other topics to talk about, the same verses could be used. So one verse gives many topics or gives insights into many topics. That is the beauty of Lord Krishna, how very expertly in 700 verses he encoded this whole knowledge, that through each verse, multiple topics he is shedding light on. So many explanations and so many aspects are being covered in every word and every verse of Bhagavad Gita. So we'll go to Bhagavad Gita from Vedabase, which is our favorite website, and we will go to chapter 6, and we will go to verse number 27. This is almost the ending, I would say, of the topic of chapter 6. Now you will say that this is almost halfway through chapter 6. Chapter 6 has 47 verses. So half of that is about 24. 48 divided by 2 is 24. And I'm saying chapter or text 27 is almost the ending of the topic of 6th chapter. That's because from verse number 33 onwards, Arjuna asks questions, and the rest of chapter 6 is answering those questions. But the main topic that Lord Krishna wanted to cover at the end of, or in chapter 6, is pretty much ending at verse number 32. As you can see, 33 is Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna said. So the topic ends here, and 27 to 32 is the conclusion of the Dhyana Yoga section, which is the main topic of chapter 6. So I'm debating whether to go through the Sanskrit. Maybe I'll go through some of the verses of the Sanskrit, and because the Sanskrit verses are just so wonderful and the meaning comes out so naturally. So verse number 27, from 1 to 26, Lord Krishna has described how to control the mind. And to controlling the mind is the pathway to realizing the reality about God. So what happens when one controls the mind fully? So when one is able to control the mind fully, then he experiences full happiness. So we will see prashanta manasam hyenam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. So prashanta manasam means extremely peaceful mana, mind, extremely peaceful mind, within a very peaceful state of mind. Hyenam yoginam sukham uttamam. Uttam sukh, he experiences the topmost happiness, the uttam sukh. Upaiti shanta rajasam, all the rajasic mode of passion is completely pacified. There is no trace of mode of passion. And Brahma Bhuta Akalmasham, he is situated, or he has identified himself with the Brahma Bhuta stage, with the stage of identification in oneness with the absolute truth, and oneness in identification with the absolute truth in terms of quality. The absolute truth is completely peaceful, and similarly the living entity feels at complete peace, just like the absolute truth. So he identifies with that absolute truth. And what happens? Akalmasham, all his misery. Kalmash means miseries. Akalmasham, all his miseries are gone. So in that stage, and this is very similar to another verse we will see in 18th chapter, when the real conclusion of whole Bhagavad Gita is happening. This is the conclusion of Dhyana Yoga section. There also Krishna says, so this is the Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shochati na kankshati. And that in that stage, what happens? So that is 18.54. And before that, there is a description of how one is able to completely control the mind and reach this stage of Brahman, the stage of realization of oneness with, it means complete peace and happiness as the Brahman. So in that stage, we'll go to the next verse. So next three verses, 28, 6.28, 28, 29, and 30 are giving the three levels of understanding of the absolute truth. In the whole of Bhagavad Gita, there are three places where the three levels of understanding are given. As in the Bhagavatam, we saw Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, and Bhagavan. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, those same three understandings are given in the Bhagavad Gita as well at three different places: chapter 6, chapter 15, and chapter 18. And at many other places, more details are given about this, but these three levels are very clearly given at three places in the Bhagavad Gita. So 28th verse is talking about that Brahman stage. So Yunjanevam Sadatmanam Yogi Vigata Kalmashaha Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham Atyantam Sukham Ashnute Atyanta Sukha. So thus the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination. Vigata Kalmashaha, free from all material contamination, and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness, Sukhena, in transcendental loving service to the Lord. Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham. So he comes in Samsparsha. Sparsha means to touch. So Brahma Samsparsham, he comes in touch with that Brahman. And what does he experience? Sukham, Atyanta Sukham Ashnute. So Atyanta Just like in the previous verse, it is said Sukham Uttamam. So here again, that perfect stage of happiness. Atyanta Sukham Ashnute. Ashnute means to experience. So that's what he's experiencing. So this is the Brahman stage. This is like, you are smelling the cake. You have been just eating salad or grass all your life, which means you have been entangled in material miseries all the life. And now you're able to experience that Brahman and you feel so happy. Then the next verse, so this is the Brahman. So it's the Brahma Samsparsham is directly mentioned here. The next verse is talking about the Paramatma. The Paramatma, as we know, and Arjuna knows, to whom Bhagavad Gita is being spoken, Paramatma is present everywhere in every living entity and in every atom in this whole material creation. So here Lord Krishna is talking about the Paramatma realization. So Sarvabhutastham Atmanam Sarvabhutani cha Atmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshinaha. So a true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Now here, if you see, Srila Prabhupada is using the word, a true yogi sees me in all beings. Now the word me is not there in the Sanskrit. Mam or Mayi or Aham, such words are not there, but Srila Prabhupada is giving an integrated understanding. He is not too much concerned about giving a complete treatise or on the Bhagavad Gita and to be accurate at a literary level. His intent is to arouse bhakti in the heart of the reader. His intent was not to get the Pulitzer Prize for the best translation or the most word by word accurate translation of the Bhagavad Gita. That was not the intent. The intent was to create more devotees, to bring souls who are lost in this material world closer to Krishna. So he has given an integrated understanding, and we will see in the very next verse how this translation is very true. He is translating Paramatma as me, even though the word me is not technically there in the verse. So that is the beauty of Srila Prabhupada, of how he is giving a full understanding right from the get-go. Even in the previous verses, he has mentioned the supremacy or the Bhagavan aspect of the Lord, even though that is revealed a little later in the Bhagavad Gita. So here, the Paramatma understanding from Lord Krishna's standpoint is coming out very clearly. He says, Sarva Bhutastham Atmanam. So, Sarva Bhutastham Atmanam, that particular Atma or the super soul that is situated in all living entities. What we know that is the Paramatma. So this is referring to the Paramatma. And some Sarvatra Samadarshanaha, that one who is self-realized, he sees the Paramatma Samadarshanaha in all living entities. So everywhere, not only in living entities, but even in the non-living entities. Sarvatra means everywhere. So this verse is talking about the Paramatma realization. And then in the next verse, you will see so many instances of Aham, Mai, Mama, so many, 4 places that is coming. And this verse number 30 is giving the Bhagavan realization. So this says, Yo Mam Pashyati Sarvatra. Now he says, Yo Mam Pashyati. Mam means me. Pashyati Sarvatra, who sees me everywhere. Sarvam cha Mayi Pashyati, that, and who sees everything, me in everything. Sarvam cha Mayi, again Mayi Pashyati. Tasya aham na pranashyami, sacha me na pranashyati. So for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor he is ever lost to me. So here 4 times Krishna is referring to himself, and he is Lord Krishna standing there as a person. talking to Arjuna. So this is the Bhagavan realization when he is talking about himself as the Bhagavan. If he did not, there was no Bhagavan realization, or that Bhagavan realization was non-existent, he would not have spoken this 30th verse. The 29th verse would have been enough. No need for this 30th verse. The 30th verse is introduced by Lord Krishna to refer to himself. So we see these three stages: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan as the person. And by the way, due to lack of time, we won't go in, but 30th and 31st verse are also very significant. Or the 31st and the 32nd, sorry, we are already on the 30th. The 31st verse especially is very significant because there Lord Krishna is saying that Paramatma and I are none different. But that's a different topic. He is introducing or adding a new aspect or a new concept there. We won't go into it, but you can clearly see 28, 29, and 30 as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Okay, so that we have established, we have seen in Bhagavad Gita. I don't think I'll be able to cover the chapter 15 aspect of it due to lack of time. But let me mention that at least for those who are interested in opening up, like we said, open up the watch and look at it inside what is there with the magnifying glass. So those who are interested, they can open the Bhagavad Gita and look at it with a magnifying glass, what is inside. And in chapter 15, they can look at 15.16, 17, and 18. 16, 17, 18. These three verses very similar to the 6th chapter verses that we just read. And these three verses are also indicating Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan aspect of the Lord. 15.16, 15.17, and 15.18. And then in the 19th verse, after that, Lord Krishna says that one who knows me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, worships me with love, with devotion, with bhakti. And he says, Sarvavid bhajati mam. So one does bhajan, which is bhakti yoga, bhajan. Sarva bhavena bharata. So that is in 19th verse, he says that, therefore do bhakti. Once you know the full understanding, the 19th verse. So he does not say there. So, okay. So now what is the question? The question, what have we established so far? We have established that the Supreme Lord has three realities in a ascending order, like looking at the cake, like smelling the cake, looking at the cake, and eating the cake. Three levels are there: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Now, from the Bhagavad Gita, we have not yet seen which is the highest. Okay, there are three. In a cake, we understand which is the highest. Everybody wants to eat the cake. Nobody just wants to just smell the cake and go back home. It's like, it would be pretty nice for me on my birthday if I had a big cake. Everybody came and smelled it and left, gave me all the gifts and went back home. And after that, I eat the whole cake. So that would be very nice. But everybody who comes also wants to eat the cake. So the beauty or the maximum pleasure and bliss is in eating the cake. So cake, we understand eating is the best. That we understand very clearly. We have not yet seen here, is Bhagavan the highest? Is Paramatma the highest? Or is Brahman the highest? Which of these three is the highest? What is the ranking? Who gets the bronze medal, silver medal, gold medal? If you want to think of it that way. Now some sequence has been shown: Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. But it could be 1, 2, 3. It could be 3, 2, 1 also. Who is the highest? We don't know yet from the Bhagavad Gita so far, from what we have discussed. So let us see some more evidence to see which one is the highest. Now, since Lord Krishna is talking in the sequence, it can either be Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan Bhagavan, Paramatma, and Brahman. It could be 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1. Paramatma being the highest doesn't make sense because in both the instances of 15th chapter and 6th chapter, Paramatma is coming in the middle. So either it is 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1. Who is the highest between Brahman and Bhagavan? Let's narrow down the question to that: Brahman and Bhagavan. Okay, so That question is very, very clearly answered. Anybody knows where it is answered very clearly? Any guesses for all the appreciate, all those who appreciate and Bhagavad Gita very much?
Is it in the 9th chapter, Prabhu?
Okay, where?
I remember Guhya, the word Guhyam, confidential, most confidential.
Okay, we are going to come to that. That is, of course, Rajavidya Rajguhyam is mentioned in the 9th chapter, but that is referring to the contents of the whole 9th chapter are very confidential, but probably what you're referring is coming from 18th chapter. Where Lord Krishna mentions the 3 levels. So that was going to be my punchline. Guhyam, Guhyataram, and Guhyatamam. We will come to that very soon. But elsewhere, just between these 2 aspects of Brahman and Bhagwan. Okay, so for lack of time, we will continue. So there are 2 places in the Bhagavad Gita where this distinction is very clearly shown, very clearly shown. So the first distinction which I want to point out is in the 12th chapter, where, so quickly we will go to 12th chapter, and I want to wrap this up in the next 7 or 8 minutes. I apologize. So in the 12th chapter, Arjuna is asking, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? So the Sanskrit of this, as again I will go a little bit quickly, that bhakta, is the bhakta more superior, one who worships as a personal bhakta of the Lord, the person Lord, or the avyaktam, avyakta and the akshara, the aksharam avyaktam means that the impersonal, avyakta especially means the impersonal, avyakta, vyakta means to be present, vyakta in Sanskrit or in Hindi we'll say vyakta ho gaya matlab wo prakat ho gaya, wo samne aa gaya, which means he's present in front of you. Vyakta. Avyakta means unmanifest. He's not manifest. He's not present in front, which you can see with your, like a person or like a form, having a form. So which is higher, Avyakta or the Vyakta? Okay. Then Lord Krishna, and the first few verses, again, I'm going to skip, go to it quickly. Lord Krishna says in text 5 that those who are attached to the unmanifested, avyakta asakta chetasam. Asakta means to be attached. Asakti, there is the word asakti means to attachment. So avyakta asakta. So those who are attached to the avyakta, which means they like to smell the cake, for them klesho adhikataras tesham. It's very difficult. Klesha means too much trouble is there. Adhikataras, too much. Adhik, klesha. Lot of klesha, lot of difficulty is there for them. But some of the people who are still very attached to this avyakta form, they interpret, even though Lord Krishna is saying that it's very hard for them. Like if you came to my birthday party, you just smelled the cake and went away. How hard would it be on you that you did not get to eat it? I am telling you, my dear friends, just smell today. You please don't eat it. Just smell and please go away. I would not be your friend anymore. I would be in a lot of trouble if I told you that. So that is the trouble they get into, because they are only just attached to smelling, which means attached to experiencing the bliss out of the Brahman, but not able to have personal interaction with God. But they say, those people who are still attached to do that, they say that this is the interpretation, yes, for those who are embodied. Devabdhir avapyate. Those who have a devabdhir. Deha means have a body. So for those low class people who have a body, yes, for them Bhagavan is higher. Just for those who have a low class body, because you are all, bodily people. I am self-realized. For me, Brahman is the highest. But for the low class people, those who have material body, who have attachment to all these sense gratification, for you, yes, you can go to temple, you can worship the Lord in the form of a deity and personal, you can do that. But once you graduate higher, then you will realize that Brahman is the highest. That's how they say. So there is another place in Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter where Krishna is clearly refuting even this aspect, that it is not just for those fallen people who have a body. By the way, those people who are saying this also have a body. They just try to claim, oh, I am self-realized. My body is not really a body. Doesn't make sense. They clearly have a body. That's why they are able to talk to us. If they didn't have a body, how come even they are moving their tongue and their vocal cords? So in the 7th chapter, in the 24th verse, this is a very key verse where Krishna says, Avyaktam vyaktim apanyam manyate mam abuddhayaha. So he's not adding any adjective here that this is meant for those with a body, low class people, the less advanced, spiritually less advanced people. Nothing. He's giving a clear, direct explanation or a description that avyaktam vyaktim apannam, that I was avyaktam and vyaktim apannam. I was avyakta before, I was unmanifest before, and vyaktim apannam, I have now taken a personal form. Vyaktim apannam means taken a, apanna means to take on. A vyakti form, a personal form. Those who think like this, manyate, those who think like this, what is Krishna calling them? Those who think like this about me, mam. What is Krishna calling them? Abuddhaya. They are non-intelligent, abuddhi, their brain is lost. Okay, param bhavam ajananto, they don't know my true nature. Mam avyayam anuttamam, so that I am eternal. Avyayam means eternal. So they don't know my eternal form. So Krishna is clearly saying here that avyakta, those who think that avyakta is the original and vyakti is the derivative or is coming from that original, they are abuddhaya. That's like saying the cake is coming from the smell. Which one is true? The smell comes from the cake or the cake comes from the smell? We all understand that the smell comes from the cake. So like that, the avyakta is coming from vyakti. And very quickly, there is now finally, or not finally, but penultimately, I'll go to the 14th chapter, last verse, Lord Krishna. This is where he clearly says, Brahmano hi pratishtha aham. I am the foundation, the cause, or from which what happens, the house or any building comes from the foundation. First there is foundation, then building comes out of it. So Brahmano hi pratishtha aham. I am the foundation from which Brahman comes, which means I am the cake from which the smell comes. So there is absolutely no evidence in Bhagavad Gita, and there is on the contrary a lot of evidence that it is Brahman the lower, then Paramatma, and then highest is Bhagavan. And finally we will conclude by showing the 18th chapter. And again, I will, in interest of time, I will just point out to all those who are interested in Bhagavad Gita, in understanding the Bhagavad Gita deeply. Look at verses 54 is the Brahman understanding. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samah sarvam bhuteshu sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So this is the Brahman understanding, that once one is in the Brahman stage, he's prasannatma, he's very happy because he has gotten rid of all the material miseries, like eating salad all your life, and then just by smelling the cake, you are in bliss. The higher so this is the Guhya knowledge. Then Lord Krishna says that there is more confidential, guhyataram, and that is coming in verse number 61. Ishwarah sarvabhutanam hrideshesu Arjuna tishthati. Hrideshe, in the heart, Ishwarah sarvabhutanam. Again, the same kind of understanding like we saw in chapter 6. That one, the Ishvara who is situated in everyone's heart is the one that is the Paramatma. And Lord Krishna says in the next verse that this, or the verse number 63, that this is the Guhyataram. This is the more confidential knowledge. And then in the next verse, he says, now I am going to tell you my most confidential knowledge. Sarva Guhyatamam Bhuyaha. Shrinu me paramam vachaha. These are my most confidential instructions, my most supreme paramam vachaha, my highest instructions, my highest words. Please listen, Shrinu, please listen carefully. And then he says these last two verses after this, which are the Bhagavan understanding, which are the two most important verses of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Man manah bhavad mad bhakto madhya jivam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane prayosi me. And finally, the most important verse of Bhagavad Gita, sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam raja. So this mam, Krishna is the personal mam, to me, please come and take my shelter. You cannot take shelter of just Brahman. This is a personal interaction. You cannot eat the smell. You have to eat the cake. So similarly, you have to surrender to the person Krishna. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksheshyami. I will relieve you of all your sinful. I'll write off all the sinful activities. Moksheshyami ma shuchaha. Do not worry. So this is the Bhagavan, the Paramam Vachaha, the supreme instructions of Krishna, which is the Bhagavan understanding. So what we have done today is given the fact that the supreme reality, what is the reality inside? I'll go back to this picture of the watch. The reality inside is that there are three realities: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That's one thing we have established. And plus we have established a hierarchy that the highest understanding is Bhagavan, the next is Paramatma, and the lowest, the third level is Brahman. From the Bhagavad Gita and from the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srimad Bhagavatam, we can get many, many more details about this. But at least from Bhagavad Gita, these are all the places where we have clearly established that the Bhagavan understanding is the supreme. And therefore, we must surrender to Krishna. Sarva dharman pratyajya mam ekam sharanam praja. So I will end the presentation here. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice lecture, exploring an extremely important topic. Especially, I was thinking while you were talking that if we contemplated that verse from the Bhagavatam that you quoted, all the other Vaishnava traditions accept that absolute truth is revealed in three features. The unique contribution of the Gaudiya tradition is the hierarchy. Like in Sri Sampradaya, they accept absolute truth is manifested in those three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. But the unique contribution of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in explaining the essence of what Lord Krishna says, like you pointed out so nicely, is this hierarchy based on revelation of Bhagavan. Like you pointed out, the initial chapter, the initial chapter that you were showing, chapter 6. So thank you very much for explaining an important, albeit complex topic, but one that's very fundamental to our tradition. So, I don't see the temple video displayed yet. Is there anyone who has questions?
I think the youth are ready for the kirtan, so
Yeah, they're ready a while back. So I think it's Sandani's turn. Is that right,
Thank you very
Sandani?
much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Brahmakrishna Das Prabhu ki jai. Wo Premanandi. Narottam Das Prabhu